A long time ago, there lived a wealthy and affluent king in a faraway kingdom of Ota. He had a very beautiful daughter of marriageable age named Nganga. Nganga was so beautiful that all the young men in the land wanted to marry her. But she dismissed every suitor who came knocking at her door, finding fault in them and deeming them unworthy of her beauty. In spite of repeated entreaties from her parents, Nganga refused to marry any man from her land. She vowed to marry a rich prince from a faraway kingdom. Her prince will be the best looking man in the entire world. He will be strong and perfect in every way and capable of loving her properly. So Nganga kept turning down suitors, and this aggrieved her parents. One fateful day, Nganga decided to visit the stream to fetch water. Dressed in the finest fabric and adorned with beads that sparkled like the stars, she walked with an air of arrogance, dismissing the greetings of the villagers she passed. While she was fetching water, a young man with piercing eyes and a charming smile appeared before her. His robes were adorned with intricate embroidery, and his jewelry gleamed in the sunlight. He seemed to be a man of great wealth and power. Nganga's eyes widened with awe, and her heart raced at the sight of such opulence. He introduced himself as Obo, a prince from a distant land, and claimed to have been following her for a while. Nganga and the mysterious man got into a conversation, and Obo spoke eloquently of his vast lands, numerous herds of cattle, and the golden fields of yams that stretched as far as the eye could see. His words were smooth and his gestures enchanting. Nganga, drawn to the glitter of his words and captivated by the allure of his presence, soon found herself entertaining thoughts of a union with this mysterious prince. He promised to take care of her, sharing part of his. Obo courted Nganga for a short while. He gave her extravagant gifts, showering her with gold and jewels. The villagers marveled at the grandeur of the gifts and gossiped about their love. Mesmerized by the promise of a life filled with riches, Nganga's heart swayed, and she accepted Obo's proposal without a second thought. She took him to her parents to introduce him formally. He sought their consent to marry their daughter. At first, Princess Nganga's parents refused, as they did not wish her to marry a stranger. She kept persuading them, telling them how so in love she was, and at last they agreed. The union between Nganga and Obo was celebrated in a grand ceremony, one of the best ever witnessed in the land of Ota. After the wedding ceremony, Obo asked to take his wife to his land. The queen didn't want her daughter to go, but then she is now married and will have to live with her husband. It was a sad day for the king and the queen. After traveling for several days, the princess and her husband crossed the border between the spirit land and the human land. Immediately they set foot in the spirit land, strange things began to happen. First of all, one man came to the prince and demanded his legs, then another his head, and the next his body, and so until in a few minutes the prince was left with nothing but a skull. The princess became terrified. She could not understand what had happened to her handsome prince. The prince then laughed at the princess and confessed that the princess was now seeing him in his natural state. He had borrowed all his body parts from the other spirits so he would look human when he wanted to ask for her hand in marriage. In fact, his entire body was constituted of only a human skull. The princess wanted to return home, but the skull would not allow this and ordered her to go with him. When they arrived at the skull's house, they found his mother, who was a very old woman, quite incapable of doing any work. She could only creep about. Nganga tried her best to help her and cooked her food and brought water and firewood for the old woman. The old creature was very grateful for these attentions and soon became quite fond of Nganga. One day, the old woman felt very sorry for Princess Nganga and decided to help her. She promised to send her back to her land as soon as possible, providing that in the future she would obey her parents and be humble. This Princess Nganga readily consented to do. Then the old woman sent for the spider, who was a very clever hairdresser, and made him dress Nganga's hair in the latest fashion. She also presented her with anklets and other things on account of her kindness. She then used her supernatural power to call the breeze to gently carry Nganga to her father's kingdom. Soon afterwards, the breeze deposited Nganga outside her home and left her there. When the king and the queen saw their daughter, they were very glad, as they had for some months given her up as lost. There was feasting and dancing throughout the kingdom for 8 days and nights. Afterwards, the king passed a law that parents should never allow their daughters to marry strangers who came from a faraway land. Then, a prince from a neighboring village came to ask for the princess's hand in marriage again, and she willingly consented. They lived together for many years and had many children. Nganga's tale echoed through the hills and valleys of Ota, a reminder that not all that glitters is gold. If you enjoy this story, please make sure to subscribe